I'm here with Joe Daigle. He's the orchestra director at Rudder High School, and he is also the music director and conductor of the Brazos Civic Orchestra. I'm glad to have Joe on the show. It's his first year. It was his first year this year as a high school director, and so we're going to get his thoughts on transitioning from middle school to high school. There are some people that might be watching this and they might be like, yeah, I'd like to transition into a high school position one day. What are they going to expect as far as workload, logistics, that like what kind of changes can they expect? How much more time in the day is a high school job going to take rather than a middle school job?
At the middle school level, there's obviously, you have all of these hoops that have to be jumped through. We take fun trips, we do these things. At the high school level, you're really thinking about that day-to-day in and out of the classroom. How are they succeeding every single day? And that's a different thing than you need at the middle school level. So I think it took me a lot more prep time to prepare in some ways for the expectations. Because they know music a little bit better, that's not the thing you're focusing on. It's like, okay, now what skills are we going to need? How am I going to create a warm up? And I love to use warm ups for this. I trick them every day. I say I trick them, but I build in technical exercises that are going to be used in the pieces of music that we're doing. I work them into the warm ups that we do. And so if there are rhythms, if there are keys, if there are chromatics, if there's finger patterns, whatever it is that I might need in that piece later that day, I make sure to work that in. So that does take some thought. You know, you do really have to think about like, oh, wow, we're struggling with this part of this piece. How can I turn that into a warm-up that, I hate to use the word, but that basically tricks them into learning the technical skill without having to beat them over the head with technical exercises. With books, if I've got a senior and I've got a freshman in the same ensemble, we cannot use the same level book necessarily and have it be a success for everybody. So I really tailor my exercises in my warm-ups, and we do those.
In middle school teaching, the literacy is coming from a method book, and
Right.
That's where they're reading through and getting their literacy. Whereas in high school, the literacy is coming from the pieces you put in front of them, and then you're having to address the technique more by rote.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about other logistical things like, you know, your solo and ensemble and your UIL, like all that kind of stuff? How's that different?
That was definitely something that wasn't on my radar. I wasn't used to that UIL solo and ensemble being at such an early date and when that audition was going to be. So that one caught me by surprise. We scrambled and got it all done, and the students. But I do look back at it and I say, oh, next year they're going to have so much more time because I know when this is happening. I know how to prepare them. I know how much time to give them, how to work with the accompanist because a factor in middle school, you don't generally have an accompanist. But UIL, you're required to have an accompanist. I hope more and more to do during the day. But I did find myself doing a lot of evenings. But I'm trying more and more to do my schoolwork during the day and really leave my most of my time at home for my family.
I gotcha. Yeah. It's good to have that balance for sure.
Tough.
What if anything surprised you about being a high school director in as far as how the district functions or you know, the school functions, and you're like, well, I have to do that? You know, was there anything that...
Hosting.
Yeah.
Hosting. It's the first time I've ever hosted an event at my school with lots of other schools coming in and having to work out, well, this is the warm-up room and this is the sight reading room and all these things and who's going to work this and here's the judges area. That takes a lot of time to put that together. And even with a good, very efficient orchestra council to help me, I put a lot of hours into organizing, making signs, making sure everything was going to run smoothly for the events that I hosted. And that, I think that was a surprise for me. I did not expect, I knew that I might be hosting an event, but I didn't know exactly the time that it was going to take to do that. And so there were some days when I needed to stay back and not go help at the middle school that day because I was finalizing all the details for that event. So hosting events would be one. We get pulled a lot of directions as high school directors, and it's not any different. I guess the middle school kind of does, but what I mean by that is that as you said, you may need to be helping the band. You may need to be assisting, or you may have some event that they want, for instance, maybe just my string quartet performing at. Well, that's not the whole orchestra, that's not everybody, but I still have to be a part of making sure that that string quartet is taken care of with what they're doing. I can't just leave them to do it. So there are more events, there are more things like that. There's just more things like that, pep rallies, things like that you didn't have at the middle school level that you get dragged into. And so that does cut into our ability to help to an extent. But at the same time, it kind of works out because the way that we keep progressing is to have that happen. In other words, you want the high school director to be hosting that event that you're feeding into, because as all those students go to that event, they're seeing that program, they're seeing that school, they're becoming more familiar, hopefully staying in orchestra and headed on to the next level. Uniforms, I've said this for years, the two things that stress me out the most about teaching orchestra are buses and uniforms. And I don't know how many of y'all might agree with this, but it's like teaching music and teaching, students and all of the things that we're hired to do, no problem, love doing, go home happy every day. The minute I have to deal with uniforms and making sure everybody has a bow tie and this and that, it is very stressful. So I did lean on my orchestra council really heavily for that. I did not fit a single student into a uniform this year. That had never happened at a middle school. They aren't quite on the level where they can do that for themselves yet. But I could send these high schoolers in and say, nope, go get your uniform, fix this. You need this done by the end of this week. And they made it happen. So that was a nice thing.
Yeah, I don't like to fit kids ever either.
Yeah.
I think like legally we get into some gray area maybe. I don't know. I just don't like to do it. But I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
For
so
sure.
that was a good thing. Now, uniforms in general are a challenge because we want to look good on stage, but it's important that we look and feel good on stage. And I tell my students, especially when they do solos, it's like you want to feel like you look good. It's going to make you play better. It's going to make you more confident. So we need that on stage. However, I'm not a big fan of tuxedos for every single concert. So they're nice, they're good, and we do wear tuxes and dresses. But you get a lot of pushback about that too. So I'm trying to balance that going forward with a two uniform system. I know that sounds like I'm crazy, but whereas we have a formal attire and we have a informal uniform, I would love for a high school group for me to just say, look, we're going to play this event and it's not a orchestra formal event. So I want you to wear nice looking clothes. I want you to wear a nice button up shirt, maybe a tie if you'd like, nice pants. Unfortunately, I don't know that we can really rely on that happening. I offered that for our first concert. We hadn't fit uniforms. Everything wasn't ready yet. And I offered that for our first concert, and I had a student show up in shorts. They were black. They were black, which was the requirement, all black. But I caught some flack for that. I had to make a choice of, do I let them play, or do I just tell them they can't play the concert and have them have really the second violin struggle on that concert? And so I just made the judgment call to just let him up on stage. And in retrospect, I don't know if that was the right call or not, because
it was
you think
sure.
so?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I caught a little flack for it for sure.
I mean, you want to deny a student a musical opportunity because of what they're wearing.
Right.
That's a weird thing to me. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. That's one of my strong opinions, though, is I think you just let them play.
Yeah.
And
I did.
I just feel like you don't know that kid's situation.
Right.
You don't know what happened that day. And these kids are still dependent upon parents to make stuff happen, and you don't know what happened there. And, it might not be that kid's fault.
That's right.
And so, I just wouldn't ever, personally, I just wouldn't ever say, I'm sorry, you can't play because you don't look a certain way, or you don't. I think that's just. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. At the same time, I think from a department perspective, we do want the orchestra to look good. Right? We need that. We need to establish ourselves in the community and in the school community as a professional-looking group. I mean, so it is important, and so it was a really tough judgment. I mean, I think I made the right call to let him play.
Yeah.
But it was a tough one. As much as I dislike those tuxedos, the advantage is that the school owns them. And if I put every kid in one, they have less excuses about why they aren't wearing the right thing at a concert. And so that's something just, again, to me, uniforms is stressful. It's got to happen early in the year in order for it to work. If you wait, you get too busy. And that's probably one of the things that I will certainly be changing this next year, is that we'll have uniforms. That'll be the first week. There will be no one who has not got a uniform in the first week, just so that we don't have to deal with that next year. So that one, and then buses transportation is the other one. I think that the high schools go more places, and you take your groups, you're wanting to take your groups more places. So there's more logistics to deal with transportation, with medical release forms, with all of the aspects of making sure you've dotted all the I's and crossed the T's for your trips, putting in those fine arts requests, the field trip requests, and making sure you've got an updated list and an agenda and all those things. I do think there's more time involved at the high school level than there was at the middle school. We just didn't take as many trips.
Yeah, more trips means more bus requests. I mean, you can't really put your orchestra council on that.
They can't do it at all. They can't have any aspect. So again, that's one of those that's just going to fall on the director.
Yeah.
As far as tricks, I think just having a good calendar, knowing when things are coming up, it helps. We have a really great fine arts department head, and that whole administration is really good and on top of things. So, you don't want to get that email of, hey, you haven't put this in yet. However, that was another thing that, I had some support in my first year to say, hey, I haven't seen this request go in. Are you still going on this trip?
Awesome, man. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Tell the viewers where they can find you. Where can they go to hire you, maybe as a region clinician or as a judge or as a consultant or something like that?
Yeah, probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is through the Brazos Civic Orchestra, which is brazoscivicorchestra.org. And I can be reached through that. We're on Facebook. I think we have an Instagram as well. We have a board of directors that handles some of this stuff for me now, so I don't have to do it all anymore, which is awesome. But definitely interested in anything I can do to help. If you see some things that you'd love to ask me questions, I'd love to answer them. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And then, of course, you can find me. I'm at Rudder High School in Bryan, Texas, and can definitely be found through the website there.
All right. Thanks for watching. Joe, thanks for being here.
Thanks again.
Yeah, appreciate it. See you next time.